Learn how to see. Realize that everything connects to everything else. Leonardo da Vinci.
I, I spent almost a month deciding on what should be the headline of that report. And it took a lot of debate and courage to say end of experimentation. We want to stop experimenting wholesale currency. We'll no more do more experiments because the path to production is very clear in our mind. We don't need experiment.
We don't need to experiment. Things are moving.
So if it comes to wholesale currency, my view and the ecosystem where I live in Asia, in Singapore, the view is we have a fair good understanding of why we should productionalize wholesale currency because there's a clear benefit. It is not a solution looking for a problem. It is other way around.
Wanted to move $10,000 to London today. If you wanted to move $10,000 to Kuwait today, the fastest way to do that is to get a car, drive to SFO, buy a plane ticket, and fly the 14 or 16 hours to Kuwait such that you have the money there. That's a crazy statement. In a world where I can stream video from the space station, literally, I can't move my own value efficiently between networks.
It's not a solution looking for a problem, it's the other way around.
How can you bring this digital payment closer to the asset network that is transacting, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that's the key because companies like R3 and your other competitors and around the market, they have spent a lot of time and effort to digitize assets around the network, trade finance, supply chain, the whole infrastructure getting there.
Everything in the world is going to be tokenized. The advantages will be unique data on a fully transparent system that anyone can see the information that is public. Copyright infringement, supply chain disruptions will be a thing of the past. Imagine ordering a shipping container of raw material from China, and when it arrives and inspected, it's paid for.
And as you speak, China has put some $90 billion into this trade finance blockchain network already. So it is already production grade asset transfer happening on the blockchain network. Why we are lagging in putting a payment system which is compatible to this new way of doing things? I think that urgency has to be there. And the central bank should put a lot of energy to get it there. I think that's the clarity and understanding how to bring it together.
China is walking while the US is crawling. There will be a reaction to these actions. Perhaps this is a covert operation. Some of the smartest minds in the world are working on this trade war.
Let me close here. The Philippines example I want to bring here because it is a clear demonstration of why a country like Philippines felt there's a need to launch an app to issue government bond on a DLT platform. Primarily to your previous panel discussion, there's an inclusion angle, there's a transparency angle, and there's a cost angle to do that in that way.
There's always a lot of news with Ripple in the Philippines.
Of background for everybody, what is Six Group? Because I think that's an important piece of the puzzle. And by the way, I just want to get behind everything Sapnendu just said. Like the end of experimentation, hallelujah, that's exactly where we want to be.
We are stepping into the walk phase. No more proof of concepts.
The Swiss and now Spanish, you may notice, the financial market infrastructure operator. So we have the Swiss Stock Exchange and the BME in Spain. We have the post-trade, the clearing and the CSD infrastructure. We have financial information business. But crucially, in Switzerland, we also operate the banking rails for the Swiss National Bank. And therein lies...
We want to have a global reach because these models are not regional anymore. They are global. Even so, regulation is still regional. We believe this will happen. We believe that all assets can be digital assets, no matter what.
Interledger is trying to stream all of the money. Interledger can atomically swap all assets. Six is tokenizing all assets.
The key and the great fortune that we have at Six to have such a meaningful relationship directly with a central bank, because we're operating in the infrastructure on behalf of the central bank, it puts us in this unique position where we're able to do the work that Nino is about to describe in terms of really taking this beyond the POC. Todd, you might remember.
This event, where you see Brad sitting on the right-hand side, was hosted by the SNB BNS, that's the Swiss National Bank. Perhaps Brad was invited with the work they were doing with SIX.
Back in the old R3 days, used to say the POC was dead back in 2016. Maybe for
Did he just refer to this 2016 proof of concept? Ripple and R3 teams up with 12 banks to trial XRP.
we're building in parallel to the existing infrastructure, we're building a next generation trading, issuance, settlement, custody platform. We are using R3's blockchain platform for that, which is very exciting in the CSD area. But all of that is for who? It's for our institutional market participants.
XRP is designed for bank-to-bank settlement.
Having digital assets, having issuers who want to issue bonds, equity, structured products, derivatives, we actually have all that. The last piece of the puzzle is we need the central bank digital currency element to allow us to do DVP and PVP, the payment versus the digital asset, or as we're now seeing, cross-border PVP. And that's the
internationally. And this requires coordination right from the beginning. And initiatives like the BIS Innovation Hub are a great opportunity to maximize the potential of new technologies, especially in a cross-border dimension.
Benoit Curie is taking the lead on the BIS Innovation Hub that was just mentioned. Remember that Benoit liked the post-XRP adoption boom.
I'll stop here. How do we ensure that we design the new architecture in a way to make it interoperable, both across borders and currencies?
We know how.
Jan, I hope I said your name right, Jan. And it was he's pointing it specifically at MAS and UBIN, but he was asking, as the next step, do you want to include other central banks, and how far are you in that process? Do you have a specific geographic approach in doing that?
He just mentioned Moz that was working with Ripple on a proof of concept and Bank of Canada. Bank of Canada, Bank of England, and the Monetary Authority of Singapore are all working together for a cross-border payment.
The currency itself. And I think the gentleman's question was around, it is good that Singapore had an experiment, but ultimately for a cross-border to succeed, we want multiple central banks to be issuing a wholesale currency to a common payment platform. Yes, I think as the technology stands today, as the discussion stands today, we have in discussion with Bank of England, we are discussing with Canada.
The idea here is to have people transacting, banks and firms transacting across borders using a synthetic or universal currency of some kind, or some kind of blended currency.
Or with PBOCs, you can always Google all the news we have been out there. Yes, there are discussions going in this space, but it's still early stage. I will not be saying that we have got it. We have all agreed to do that, but the discussions are in some stage of maturity.
Of course, I say that it wasn't spoken about much until recently, because Governor Carney made some very interesting remarks. I think I don't know how many of you actually saw these. I thought they were quite fascinating, actually. Just a few weeks ago, proposing basically this, right? So, and I suspect it's no accident that this work was done end of last year. But of course, he went much further, and also, if there's a third piece of reading I can encourage you to do, is actually read that speech. It's quite long, but really quite fascinating. Where, well, he is talking about the replacement of the US dollar in international trade because of the sort of imbalances that creates given the shifts in the global economy, and rather replacing it over a long period of time. He did stress that over a long period of time, replacing it with some kind of what he called a synthetic hegemonic currency, SCH. I think it's going to go down in history, right? Synthetic hegemonic currency.
R3 is working on all of these trade platforms.
So the idea here is that there is a new exchange, in fact, essentially an issuer, so presumably some kind of multilateral organization of some kind, that central banks are able to, where essentially they're able to buy this universal CBDC for their own local currencies. Now, like
IMF. Do you see IMF holding crypto assets in the future? I did not put that up there.
Remember, I'm from the legal department. I'm supposed to be very conservative about these things. I don't want to go into great details about
Maybe
the
I should take what the
Yeah,
IMF is going to do.
but
I think we stunned Ross into silence with that one.
for that to happen, okay, under the current legal framework, some country would have to use a crypto asset as its currency.
Which goes to the next question that was on the list, actually. Will central banks issue digital currency become a reality in the next few years?
Well, again, there's a lot of work being done by a number of central banks in different regions of the world. I think generally speaking, many of these central banks are coming to the conclusion that they don't see the benefits right now of doing it, but they're very seriously considering the use case. And I think as work proceeds, they maybe become the possibility may increase. Particularly the Bank of Canada with its Project Jasper experiment.
Jasper, Ubin, and the paying RippleNet customer Bank of England
Has realized that a central bank digital currency on its own may not offer benefits now, but when combined with other things like the security settlement system, use cases begin to emerge. So let's keep an open mind.
Abraham says the word interoperability comes up many times. How is this being approached, and are there any positive solutions being progressed? Many thanks to all involved.
Switzerland and Singapore, that was also in the Ubin report. So maybe John, first with you, and then the others want to chime in.
Ripple working with Singapore, and Brad at the Central Bank of Switzerland's event.
The stuff that we did with Jasper Ubin, which was more of a functional interoperability rather than a technical interoperability that allowed the functionality to be achieved without sort of having to address, different types of technical challenges of interoperability between different platforms. And I think this is a broad topic that needs to be looked at as well, because what does it mean for a CBDC token as well? If we're having a central bank issue a token in one country, and if it's a token or an account in another one, what does that mean from an interoperability perspective as well? So the one thing we do want to ensure is that we don't sort of leave sort of people on islands. We want to make sure that money is interoperable across different platforms, and of course that's a key part of what we're trying to do here as well.
The man that was just speaking works for Accenture. Accenture and Ripple have been working together from the very beginning. For Ripple to work with Reese Bank, they needed the central bank's approval.
Yep, great. And then maybe just last word, Nino, I know you're working with the group around BIS, and any maybe 20-30 seconds on interoperability across the central banks from your perspective.
The BIS Innovation Hub. Remember Benoit liked this post.
Thank you much. So I think John already mentioned many of them. So my only add-on is I think it's not just a technological issue, interoperability. It is as much about standards in different jurisdictions. It's about legal aspects. And I think the only way to overcome interoperability issues is really to cooperate and to do it right from the beginning. And
the G20. In October, a clear roadmap is going to be presented.
10 seconds, so 10 seconds.
So I just want to leave with a little bit of provocation here. I think interoperability doesn't need to be solved now. What we need is a taxonomy between different parties, defining standards and mechanism of definition. Today, due to great technology, you can have translators using APIs to talk to each other. I think focusing on interoperability can derail our discussion. What is essential is get the taxonomy right. For the smart contract, payment clearance, DVP, get the taxonomy right, rest will follow.
I love it. So Nendu, Nino,
understand that the world is changing. The snake which cannot cast its skin has to die, as well the minds which are prevented from changing their opinions, they cease to be a mind. Crypto is changing the fiat monetary system, whether they like it or not.